Good morning. Over the past weeks, I've been building several cutting boards because I want to know the process of how to make these boards, particularly the end grain type. For this build, I'll be using walnut hardwood. It is known for its nice aesthetics and its dark color. I'm gonna start by cutting this plank into 2 feet length to make it more manageable. End grain cutting boards sell as much as $200 to $400 per board, of course, to the right customer. Recently, I have sold several boards. The size is around 2 by 12 by 18 for around 10,000 pesos, roughly around $200. That's why I'm exploring better ways to assemble these boards and create more sellable designs. Basically, it's a good business opportunity. When creating end grain boards, I try to remove the nuts of the wood so the top would not end up like that. I also avoid as much as I can to use the lighter part or the sapwood of the plank so I would have a better looking top. I'll be ripping these planks to 2 by 2s and start gluing up. From the 24 teeth stock blade, I upgraded to 40 teeth ever since I got cleaner cuts. To make sure my pieces are square, I would run them through my thickness planer. It would also remove the table saw marks on my wood. It is important that all sides and faces are smooth and flat because even a small gap after glue up could ruin the whole project. I'm hesitant to use fillers for this kind of project because this one would be in contact with wood, so all materials should be food safe. Most cutting board builders use tight band 2 or tight band 3, so I would be using these also. Starting the happiest part of this build, the glue up. For my first cutting board builds, I made a mistake by not putting enough glue. So I will not make that mistake again. I'm making sure that all my pieces are lined up properly before I tighten my clamps. Tight band 3 gives you around 20 to 30 minutes window time to align your pieces correctly. So the first glue up is done. I'll be leaving this for around 24 hours. I'll be removing the clamps by the time. The size of this board is 18 by 18 inches. My thickness planer here at home is only a Makita 2012 NB. Its capacity is only 12 inches, so I'll be taking this to my workplace. By the way, I live here in the Philippines. Woodworking is just taking off in our country. So we do not have access to the nice woodworking equipments available abroad. Currently, the only nice cabinet saw available in our country is Harvey. For other essential woodworking equipment such as a large thickness planer and a wide jointer, we need to import it on our own since the nicer brands are not yet available here. But once a while, the local brands import these bigger equipments, but stocks are inconsistent because the demand is not yet enough. After a couple of passes through the thickness planer, my boards are now flat and smooth. Next up would be the cabinet saw. I keep the offcuts and make it into these small wood rocks. So back at home, I am now going to cross-cut my piece. This part is better than using a cross-cut sled. It is more safer, more accurate, and less blowout on the ends. Unfortunately, I have yet to do this on my new table saw. I upgraded from a Bosch 10J to a Bosch 10XC recently, and hopefully to a Harvey C300 soon. So this is the blowout I've been talking about earlier. This could have been avoided by using a crosscut sled. So a quick pass through the belt sander. These small pieces from the blowout can get in between your planks during glue up, so it is best to remove them before moving on to the next step. So for sanding, I use 60 grit first. This is to remove the marks left by the planer. Next step is to flip the pieces 90 degrees. Here you figure out or decide on how you would like your end grain board to look like. You can either lay it down aligned or like a brick type wall. For me, it is easier to lay it down like a brick wall type design because during glue up, when you tighten the clamps, the pieces might move. A single misaligned piece could ruin your project or make it less pleasing to the eyes. The latter design is more forgiving because if you misalign a piece by a couple of millimeters, it wouldn't be obvious. So this is the most important part of the build. During the second glue up, you should make sure that you have placed enough glue on all the surfaces because if there's a spot with not enough glue, it might cause a gap. So the best thing to do to repair that mistake is probably to cut that part out again and just reglue it. So after 24 hours of letting the glue set and cure, I'm now removing the clamps. The next part would be now the sanding. By the way, this small board is made of beech wood. Again, I took my boards to my workplace because I still do not have a drum sander. It's an equipment that is not easily available in our country. So here's another way of sanding your boards. The workers here showed me a DIY improvised sander using a grinder, plywood, and sanding paper glued under. This is certainly faster, but of course, this is less safe since it's a DIY equipment. So try it at your own risk. Back at home, so I start out again with 60 grit. I'm going to work my way up until probably around 320 grit. As we all know, in sanding, patience is key. So I will trust the process on this. So I start out with 60 grit, then I'm moving up to 80, and then to 120, 180, probably 240 or 260, then 300. When sanding, it is really best to use a vacuum attached to it. First, you will finish your sanding session faster, and of course, less dust will be in the air. And of course, don't forget to use a nice dust mask or a respirator. This next step is for the aesthetics, the look of the board. So I'm cutting 45-degree angles on the edges of my board. Next, I'll be using one of my favorite tool. It's a Bosch 12 volts cordless palm router. I like it because it has an ergonomic grip. It is lightweight and has a nice balance to it. To further enhance the look of this board, I'm going to use a 45-degree bit on this router. I'm going to trim it on top and at the bottom. The final grit for my orbital sander would be 320. You can sand up to only 220 or 240 or even go higher than 320. So it's really up to you on how you would like your board to feel. So on to the last part of sanding. I sprayed water on my piece, then let it dry. This process raises the grain of the wood, making the fibers easily removable by a high grit of sanding paper. As a result, you will have a smoother cutting board. The final step is applying the coat that will protect your piece. For this, I'll be using mineral oil to seal the pores of the wood. This coat will make your board resistant to bacteria and dirt. I will let this coat dry overnight, let it seep into the wood, and probably apply another coat in the morning. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.